You're grinding every day. Long hours, no backup, no accountability. That ends now. The Empower Solopreneur Mastermind gives you one simple advantage: a weekly power session that turns isolation into domination. Every Friday morning on Zoom, you'll get real coaching and real feedback to make real moves. Join a group of driven professionals in a program designed for solopreneurs and people working at home. Stop getting stuck. Start scaling. Seats are limited. Lock in yours today at modernobserver.com/empower-mastermind.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. I'm Bill Corral, and I'm here with my partner in empowerment, changing the world for better a little bit at a time, in our own little ways, Jan Jeremias. And Jan, it's been a couple of weeks since we actually had a chance to see each other or chat, and it's been an interesting start to 2026 for me. I'm really looking forward to how the rest of this year is going to play out. But so here we are. Today is President's Day. You mentioned to me before we came on air that there's a personal, celebration for a family member's birthday today as well. I'm kind of in a similar space at this point. I've got two family members who have birthdays today, neither of whom are with us any longer. And that kind of really opens the door to an interesting conversation. On Facebook, one of the things I like about Facebook the most is that every single day it tells me all of my friends that are having birthdays today. I love that. And I go and I wish every last one of them. Sometimes it takes me 15 minutes to wish all of my friends that have birthdays on a particular day, because sometimes it's 40 or 50. But the point to the story is, as I'm looking at each one of their names and I'm thinking about how we're related to each other, did I meet you on a game online over the last 20 years, or are we really friends in real life, or, all that sort of thing? And then there are other people that just all these memories just kind of rush into the picture and fill me up. So that's one of the two practices that I start every routine day with. One is wishing people a happy birthday, and the other one is poking them. And the poking isn't necessarily something that everyone understands, but it's one of those kind of interesting applications on Facebook that got started around 2008. And the whole idea of it was just to have a reason to, interact with friends that are all over the world. And as the algorithms have made fewer and fewer people show up in our streams, and my number of friends has grown dramatically since that time. I went from having a few hundred in 2008 to having just a little less than 8,000 now. So I can't be in touch with all of those people every day. They can't even see everything that I post. I can't see what they post, but I can poke them. And that's the ones who stick around and do it every day, or at least frequently. We kind of smile about, that how we feel seeing each other's face, and what the whole notion of hi, how are you doing? I'm wishing you a good day. And then here's a poke for you, by the way. So
Mhm. Yeah, interesting when you know, loved ones or friends, the birthdays that come up, and any emotions that might surface, and not necessarily different than any other day, but sometimes different. So it has just a different energy to it. Maybe because it was a day you would have celebrated. Like it's, um, if it's a person that's not, let's say, here anymore physically, then it might not be different in the fact that you think about them often. But I think that, as birthdays or special occasions are all of a sudden, or even an anniversary of a passing, I think it just has a different energy about it. because you would have definitely spoken to them that day.
Absolutely.
You would have, acknowledged that day for them in some way, whatever it was. And so I think all of a sudden that energy is like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's a noticing that they're not here, but it's also this noticing of like, you know, I, of something shifted, of, and the connection you still feel to them. So that's what I was thinking about today, is like the connection that I still feel even though they're not physically here. And so yeah, it's just been an interesting morning. And I mean, I shared with my sister-in-law, that person, I mean, I light a candle for them every day. It's not like it's not, every morning or at some point during the day. Usually I light a candle next to their picture. And that's just mainly for me. It's more of a form of even though you're not physically here, you're still here for me. Is
It
really
sounds
what it's you're still here for me. Like you're,
right.
and keeping that aspect of them, I think, for me alive, not in a, not in a sort of sad way, often keeps me going. It's like this feeling of like, oh, they're still here for me, especially if it's a person that offered you support or comfort or whatever. That support is still present, whether they're physically here or not here,
Right.
And so I think that that's the way I think about it. But still, this day has a particular energy because it is their birthday. So I'm like, you know,
Well, what I love about how you describe that is pretty much what's contained in the action of poking on Facebook. It's a different manifestation, and there's still a picture of the person's face when we do the poke. And it's kind of fun because every once in a while, people will lose where to go and get the poke because Facebook has been really bad about hiding it on us. And like I said, there are some people that I've been poking, back and forth with since 2008, which is coming up on 20 years. And then there are just many, 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 many whose birthday comes up that are no longer here to poke. So it's a similar kind of a gesture, the wishing the happy birthday and taking a moment, just to kind of presence, who they were, the feeling of all about Bob or the feeling of all about Mary. It's not like specific memories in some cases. It's more like, how do I feel inside knowing that we could say anything we wanted to each other? Neither one of us would be offended, but if anybody else ever heard us talking to each other, they think we hated each other, and it was far from that. Our own little special love language, if you will, that you get after being friends and relatives for so many years.
hmm
So here we are. Yesterday, actually, the day before was the midpoint to the month, and now we're on the 16th. And it's hard for me to believe that I actually got in the car on a day not too much unlike today, with maybe a little less snow on the ground than we've got right at the moment, on January 5th and headed south. And I drove around for the better part of, until February 1st, when I picked my wife up over at the airport, and then we spent the next 10 days with each other at a resort, and then I really didn't want to drive back to the cold north yet because it was still sub-zero temperatures in the morning, and I kind of conned her into staying for an extra 3 days, and so we did, and we had a marvelous time.
It's great.
And it wasn't necessarily even that it was warm, because it was warm for, compared to here, but it wasn't warm for Florida. Some of our days down there were, the highs were in the 40s. Okay. And not to be a whiner or anything like that, but when it's 60, 68 degrees down there, the Floridians put their sweaters on. Yeah, I know you know what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I, been in, I speak to my mom every day, And so, plus I follow the weather down there because she's there. So, so I've been quite aware of, 30-degree mornings for Florida, which sound warm comparatively speaking, when last Sunday it was real feel minus 15 or minus 20, you
Yeah.
know, and I was, but still like, but obviously for people down there, quite chilly and, even turning on the heat, which is if they have heat, because some people don't even have heat down there, but turning on the heat if you have heat, because, 30s or 40s or 50s is cool, especially when the sun's not out.
Yeah, I don't care who you are. If you're outside in the 30-degree weather, it's cold, okay? Um,
I don't know. I watch people out there and sometimes, and before this cold spell, and they'll be out in 30 degrees and like without a jacket and everything.
yeah,
And I'm just like, how do they do it? Like, I can't do it. But let me tell you, after being in minus 15 the past few days, it felt kind of balmy.
yeah,
I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it's not bad out, as I
for sure.
walked
Yeah.
yesterday as I walked yesterday, and I did an extra little long walk because I could actually, tolerate it, and so could Tonka. And I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, it's actually not bad outside."
Yeah. Well, I can harken back to the days when I came back from the University of Colorado and met my wife. And I used to run around in October, November with 28 degrees outside and in a t-shirt. My metabolism was really high. I haven't been that guy for a long time. Uh, at the moment, I'm actually my metabolism is way down because I took a spill when we got to the resort. I wound up sliding on a marble bathroom floor with some water on it, and it went down pretty hard. So I'm nursing achy joints, a little bit of a low back thing, and a hip, my elbow, and it seems like um, going up and down stairs is a chore for me now. So I'm more or less just kind of nursing the moment and enjoying what it takes for me to accomplish what things that are actually very very routine. You would have laughed. I mean, probably commiserated with me getting in and out of my little car with my big old long legs that barely would fit if the door wasn't opened all the way, because they have a huge door. It's about the size of a Cadillac door, but it's only two-thirds as long. Um, and I would have to contort myself, and it was very painful, and the joints just did not want to move. So here I am in the north in February. Came back from a nice warming up. It's in the 70s down there now. Um, and I think the other thing I just want to reflect on is that from a spiritual standpoint, I posted every day on Facebook, let people know where I was, where I was going to next, and time after time after time, people would contact me. And again, I think I mentioned this in our last episode, and just say, "Hey, if you're in my neck of the woods, come see me." And so I did. So I probably, one way or another, hooked up with about 15 different people. Um, did a lot of driving, just a little under 4,000 miles in driving, 3,988 miles, I think is what the final thing was. I reset at the end of my block, and then I checked it again when I got home last Friday. Friday the 13th was a good day for me, by the way. So, yeah, so it's kind of a run-on sentence about what the day is for me, and the 16th of February just seems like it's here so quickly.
I mean, even for me, and I have been busy working, it seems like it's been really like just flying, it's very quick. Um, you know, feel like I blinked and the first 2 weeks of February are gone.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that I don't know, you kind of it's like when you hear something or you heard something as a kid and you used to laugh, but like, um, when adults would say, "Oh, time just flies by." or something. And as a kid, it seems to move so slowly. And, I just remember how long it would feel till like for school to be out or for summer to get here and things like that. And now, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, it's the middle of February. And when you look at your schedule, you have things scheduling into March and April and possibly even May. And you're like sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, that's half the year.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, what was really blessed for me was I really literally just lived in the moment for 5.5 weeks. There was really not more than two or three things that were hard and fast schedule items. And I kind of liked that, that the day was the day. And what I put on my calendar that was really exciting for me were any football games that I wanted to watch until that was over. And then Yukon men and women basketball. And that's pretty much it. But I do say that my dear wife and I love watching the Olympic curling. The Olympic curling event is something that we have just fallen in love with since the 1970s or 80s. And we look forward to it every 4 years because, quite frankly, it is a sport that absolutely anyone can do well at. It has nothing to do with size or strength, or it has a lot more to do with eye-hand coordination and luck, which is kind of a cool thing. It's a what is it? They're 24 kilo rocks that you slide down a 140-foot. It's somewhere between horseshoes and I don't even know what, but the Scots came up with it about
I would
500
say
years ago.
shuffleboard is the thing that comes to me. Remember, always reminds me of shuffleboard,
Yeah,
curling. Um, but to your note on schedule, I could tell you weren't attaching to a schedule. But yeah, I am actually really since I don't really follow that many sports, I do love the Olympics. I do love watching the Olympics. And so I've
right.
do find myself watching quite a bit or catching it afterwards or whatever and
Yes.
really enjoying it. And really just like it's always really interesting to me to watch and to realize, like the skill and the perseverance and the dedication they have
Yeah.
um to whatever sport they compete in. And the support around them, which is always really beautiful of, family members who are able to attend and things like that. Or not, as we began with loss, and they had the men's skater who lost both his parents,
Yes.
the one from Simsbury.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just realizing, when you listen to him speak, how even though they're physically not here, how much they are on the ice with him when he skates.
He was completing a promise to them, wasn't he?
Yeah, like, I mean, they were there with him. Yeah.
The last time that they saw him, they were sending him off on a plane to go do something. And they said, you get yourself to the Olympics. No matter what it takes, you get there. And so he was completing that promise. Now, it was bittersweet to watch him skate because I think he fell twice, if I remember correctly, but it really didn't matter. That wasn't the point. The point was out of hundreds of thousands of people, all over the United States who have spent their entire lives, and many of them have bittersweet stories why they couldn't, be at the Olympics. He was there and he completed that journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and his skate was beautiful, even with the falls, like, he's
Yes, it
just like
was.
you could just feel the emotion, see the emotion,
Yeah.
as he skated, and it was just spectacular to watch. Like, you could see, like I said, how much his parents were there skating with him.
It was almost like he had let go. He was no longer concerned about the routine. The routine was habit at this point, and he was just in the moment, enjoying where he was, looking around and sharing that moment with millions of people, both in the stadium and watching on television.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, to one of the things you said, it was like he was in the moment. And I think that his ability to convey that through his skating was remarkable. It was like watching, like, or listening to somebody play a really beautiful piece of music. I mean, that's what it reminded me of.
I
Or,
agree.
or if a poet who reads their poetry. It was like his body was demonstrating his love for them, and and that promise. And so it was I was very touched by his skating a lot.
Yes.
It's like, you certain skaters, you kind of feel or certain athletes, you really feel that emotion when they actually get up there and they do whatever sport they actually participate in.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about skating is that we have a wonderful uh, commentator, Scotty Hamilton, who we loved watching when he was skating for gold 40 years ago or whenever it was. And the thing we really notice is that they hire people to talk, and they don't necessarily have any idea what they're going to talk about. And they're either telling you what the person should have done in order for it to be better, rather than explaining to you how difficult it was and what all had to be overcome in order to be in a position to even make the attempt. So we're at the point right now. I can remember when a triple Lutz was pretty much all you could eat back in the 1960s.
Oh, I know.
You had the sow cow, you had the toe loop, and then you had the triple Lutz, and those were the three things that if you wanted to be, a Fleming or somebody else who stood on the podium and got the gold medal, you had to be really precise with those things. And as time went on, and Jan and I were sitting here commenting the other night, remember the years when nobody could do the quadruple jumps, and it was like, who can skate a clean program? They're the ones that are going to get on the podium, you know. But I agree with you. I think that there's an opportunity to get involved in the stories and the narrative of what people have done to be there for their minute. In many cases, it's less than a minute. Like
Hmm.
you watch the speed skaters, our American speed skater who won both the 1,000 and the 500 meter, had gold in those, and that hasn't been done since 1980, which we saw that Olympic as well. Uh,
Yeah.
but the really neat part of it is that his 500 meter was like 39 seconds, 37 seconds, something ridiculous like that. Uh, and that's it. A lifetime. He's 21 years old, and just absolutely a gazelle on the ice, no doubt about it. And I don't know how many people out there have ever tried speed skating, but we moved into a house when I was 9 years old, and the folks who moved away left a treasure trove of all sorts of different things that they didn't want to ship to Australia, where they were moving to. One of the things that they left was an old pair of speed skates. And those things had about a 17-inch blade on them. And you want to talk about like next to impossible to skate on, after you're used to using figure skates. My parents were very, very uh, careful. They did not want us to try to learn on hockey skates, which had no support for your ankles, right? Every kid got figure skates, and then if we wanted to get hockey skates later, we could do that. But I had to be a maverick and try these speed skates when I was 12 or 13 years old. And I'll tell you what, it's a feeling. It's, you go about three times faster than if you're on figure skates. And it's really just kind of a neat thing to be able to learn how to turn, uh, because they're so long. And you do that by stepping and jogging, your feet around into a circle. You don't kind of do it the way you do on figure skates by leaning. But the point is that you watch these people, and they have reached a point of excellence, You see it also on a silly thing like snowboarding. The snowboarding has become an elegant, absolutely fascinating sport to watch, especially the competitive speed sport, snowboarding, where there's four lanes and there's four women or four men chasing each other down the hill. All these moguls and flips and whatever. I don't know. We don't get to see that every day.
No, no, I actually know I'm actually through yoga. I used to go on yoga retreat, and one of the women who came was actually Bodie Miller's mother.
Yes.
So Bodie's younger brother, who actually passed away, um, was supposed to go to the Olympics for snowboarding, and he passed away very young. Don't know that he ever got to an Olympics. I don't think so. But yeah, and so there is like I always end up watching, and I always also when I watch downhill, I think of you know Bodie. But there's just this, yeah, I think that something that I think it's also I find that as I've aged, there is a different sort of appreciation for the hard work that goes into and the dedication that it must take for any of these athletes to
Yeah.
compete and to do what they do. I don't know that I realize the difference between like figure skates for like pair or whatever versus ice dancing. I don't think that I ever, and they stressed that they talked about that a lot, I found. And I did not realize that. I mean, it made sense once they said it, but
Absolutely.
I don't think I realized that. And also sometimes you have like single skaters that become pairs. And then all of a sudden you kind of get, I think, the dynamic, the shift that must have to happen to go from a solo all of a sudden to, to skate with a partner.
Yes. Yeah, we were really amazed because Jan and I have been watching the Olympics for our 52 years together, and of course, both of us watched through the '60s on ABC Wide World of Sports and all the rest of that good stuff. And through all of this time, they were talking about Tara Lipinski, who herself was a gold medal skater, was talking about the work that the women have to do on their abdominal, muscles in order to be able to hold their their form while they're being lifted. And she kind of compared it, to some a gymnast who's either on the rings, doing that sort of thing. And I looked at Jan and I said, we've been watching this forever. That's the first time I've ever heard any announcer talk about that level of detail. I didn't know that there was all this extra abdominal work that had to be done. And that to me is value added commentating. I'm not interested in what they should have done to do it better. I'm really only interested in tell me what's going on. What am I looking at that if you tell me a little bit more, I'll see more and I'll enjoy this experience. And
Mm.
there are some people that are very good at that, enhancing the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think having, if you're, always I think all of a sudden when you and then there's a different awareness when if you do anything like so for me, as you practice yoga. So there's a very big difference between doing certain things, let's say certain poses with arms down by your side versus arms up in the air. And you think to yourself, like, not only are they doing this, but changes the physics totally when they lift their arms above their head.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you know, the centripetal force or whatever is very different. Your center of gravity is somehow altered. You have to be able to keep the core strength to be able to lift up the arms and keep
Right.
them whatever steady and not like sort of like wet spaghetti. Um, and also you start to look for like I think there's a was an appreciation for certain like where let's say you had pairs where coordinated, not only coordinated lower body, so they're skating the same thing, but the arm positions and when they move are exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's like it has to be that aware of each other so that when you do some sort of arm, like you stretch your arm out, you both stretch it out at the same rate, at the same height is remarkable.
Yeah. And that's a kind of a thing that none of us know how they do that. And that's not something people are giving their secrets away on, you know? No one wants to make that easier for the competition. But if you think about the rotations, especially when they're doing the spins, and some of them are just spot on. It's almost like, it's one person in two bodies doing the same thing. Very, very cool.
It is very cool. Very cool.
So is there anything in particular, other than what we've talked about, that like an event that you've always really enjoyed watching on the Winter Olympics?
I mean, I've always enjoyed from the time I was very small. I've always enjoyed the ice skating, always.
Yeah.
From the time I was very young. Uh, I think other sports I would watch just because I was excited by the Olympics, and I don't know if I really certain years I followed certain things more depending on who was competing. And my father was a big runner and followed every track meet anyway, so Olympic track was a big thing for him, and so we would always watch that. But I think that in the Winter Olympics, I mean, I watched almost everything, I think, a little bit anyway, but I always felt like very drawn to the ice skating. Um,
Well, the ice skating has something for everyone. It's elegant. There's a lot of commiseration if somebody stumbles or falls, um, and especially when you're looking at the top skaters. Um, do you remember ever watching figures where they're doing these so slow figure eights and inside outs and backwards? And it's like they're barely moving, and the goal is to precisely do these drawings on the ice with their skates.
mhm,
um, you don't see that broadcast all that much anymore. They sort of skip over showing that these days. But in the early days, before they were doing jumps and flips and all that sort of thing, the figures themselves were, that's why, it's called figure skating.
mhm. Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I actually, I was thinking about the same thing you mentioned earlier about the quads and how it used to be, and now how many people do and how many quad jumps are in a particular program or and everything. And when you watch those and you realize, like, you think to yourself, like, how many revolutions they're doing in the air
Yeah.
without touching the ground. That and in the pairs when they kind of when they throw the woman
That was
and she
18 feet.
yeah, yeah, and they have to, and and the skater who had, was recuperating from the torn meniscus. And every time she landed, you were like, okay, it was
Exactly.
like this feeling of like, oh my gosh, like, you kind of understand why she's skating, but you're like, is it worth permanent knee damage? On the other hand, is what you think. But yeah, as every single time she does that jump and and the male skater throws her, you're sitting there going, wow, that's like she has to come down and she's landing on that one limb that's already injured with such power and control. Like
Yeah.
she was gonna stick it.
Yeah.
She was like and you could see her fight for it. Like she was fighting for it. And it was just, yeah.
Well, that empathetic, uh, being on the ice with them, they experiencing. Okay, here's a deep breath moment. And oh my God, she pulled it off. That was so fantastic. No big deal. Then a big smile on her face, you know?
I know exactly. Or like you could just see them like do something and or
Yeah.
whatever, and they're like, and you're like, okay, yeah, that and sometimes if they go to the reactions of the coaches
Yes.
and when they get excited, like like you can imagine what they're feeling as they watch, after spending so much time and effort and with their whoever they're coaching, and you see their expression and their joy
Yeah.
coming. And I think that that's why always the Olympics has always been very special, because I think that just watching the reward. The other thing that I think I really liked, and I think, I don't know, maybe it's where I am, or maybe I just felt like they talked about it more, was this um focus on the appreciation of people just being there. Just the fact that they were there. Like,
Yeah.
whether the there was just this different energy to me that was portrayed. It was like, oh my gosh, like I made it to the Olympics kind of attitude,
Yes.
versus just being so focused on the medal, on the people who would medal.
Yes.
I just felt this kind of a acknowledgement of people who made it this far, which is obviously, like you said, a really big deal. I mean, how many people actually get to go, 20 people, 20 guys get to, skate in the long program or something, the final long program. Like, that's not like globally, that's not a lot of people.
No, it really isn't. And sometimes it's 3 or 4 years at a time. It's the same 20 people, plus or minus a few,
Right.
in all the top events. But the other thing, too, is what I'm hearing you describe is the humility of the moment, where human beings have this propensity sometimes when they're at the top of their game, and all the hype about the so-called quad god. When I first heard him having that nickname, I looked at Janet and I said, that's very, very unfortunate. He had some days where it went really well, but what's he going to do when it fails, And it was almost like the good Lord was speaking to me, and what he was basically saying is that when human beings lose sight of the fact that they're human beings, and on any given day, you can have different outcomes. And what did he do? He ended up falling 4 times. He went from being clearly the winner till the short program, and then the short program he tried to do, I think, 5 quad jumps, and 4 of them he fell on the ice. I didn't actually see the performance; I just heard about it, and I said, there are other people who could have had nicknames like that over the years, who came in a little bit more quietly, a little bit more like, let's see what we can do today, because every day is different.
I also think that it ends up placing, I just got off of my meeting, and we were talking about expectations.
Oh yeah.
And I think that there just gets to be this sort of expectation placed when you give something a label. It's like when you give someone a label as the quad guy, it's almost like what ends up happening if he doesn't do it, then people like are going to say, well, he didn't skate to his full potential. And the temptation to kind of like all of a sudden, well, you've got to meet that expectation that you have that
Yes.
name, and and everything, whether you're feeling it or not. All of a sudden you feel like you have to do it because that's what everybody's been calling you, whatever. So I think there's this, it's one thing to have a name, but it's almost like the expectation that goes along with it, and
Yes.
everything that's involved, like the amount of pressure that he must have been under to do it, and to and obviously to do it well, and his own pressure, and then basically world global pressure because he's gotten that name and it's so well publicized and
Yes.
everybody is talking about it, is like in I saw one, I think I read one thing where he talked about the fact that he was overwhelmed, like, and you kind of get it, you're like,
Yeah.
No wonder he was overwhelmed. I mean, basically, the whole world's looking at you, expecting you basically with a certain amount of expectation and, you know, and that label, and then you go in and you're like, and you're not feeling it today, or you're tired, or, you're probably nervous and sleep is probably not even existent because, you know what's coming. I mean, we all know what that's like. And
Absolutely.
so I think there's that whole idea of expectation, which is just
Well, see, in people, um, people who are selling, which is what commentators do,
mhm.
they have this need to take the extraordinary and then quantify it and objectify it, so that they're moving the extraordinary into the, it's now that it's been done, it's no longer something that people are aspiring to. It's no longer out there in the extraordinary. We now know that it can be done. And when they do that, they have to, I don't know, they have to name it and they have to give it an ordinariness, that really takes away from. I think a quad jump is freaking awesome. I have no idea how they do that,
Me either. Me either. And I sit there and I guess it was in one like in one of the programs where I think, like that I'd watched him earlier in the week where he like nailed everyone and you're just watching him
Yes,
and you're like in awe of like how does he do that? Like I think at one point he did a quad and then a triple like a few steps later, and you're thinking about like the power that must take, like to do that quad and all the physicality, like the structure, the holding in the core, the
yeah,
solidity that takes to come off, take maybe a step or two, and then just jump right up again and go into a triple was just like, you know, truly awe-inspiring. You are watching, um, something, like, amazing or awesome taking place right in front of you. And then, I agree with you, giving it a name sort of sometimes just like leave things alone. They shouldn't be named.
absolutely.
They should not be named. And sometimes they can't be named. They just can't. No matter what name you give it, it kind of belittles it and brings it down. It becomes, like you said, too ordinary. It becomes like, mundane. There are certain things which are beyond words.
Right. Yeah. I've been watching documentaries on the Beatles lately. And that's, for me, one of the main reasons that they did so well for so long is they didn't buy the hype themselves. They
Hmm.
always knew, and they never really had the external view of who the Beatles were because they were living the Beatles life. And what it finally came down to, when the dawning, a similar thing, especially when folks start crossing over into, talking into religious sort of aspects and that sort of thing, and the world did not know how to interpret what John Lennon said about the Beatles being more popular than Jesus Christ. He was not saying that like a brag. What he was saying is, you people are you're losing your minds over something that's temporary. Okay, you should not be idolizing the Beatles more than God. You just shouldn't. And quite frankly, that's what he was trying to say. And it's the same sort of thought that you get from somebody like Billy Joel, who was told a couple of times, especially after he was married to Christy Brinkley, he had the world by the tail. And they, what an amazing force of nature he was in the music world. And now to him, he was an abject failure because he wanted to be a composer. He wanted to write classical music. He wanted to be a Stravinsky or a Shostakovich or someone like that. But now he's only just a piano man, right? And he said, "No, you don't understand. I am the epitome of mediocrity. And quite frankly, I do it so well, it looks great to you."
Yeah, I think that yeah, it's interesting how
there is a there's a energy that comes about when somebody has, and I guess I would say that comes in, that's like sort of like a humbleness
Yes.
that is present, which has a different energy. I follow a lot of meditation teachers, and or a number of them. And it's interesting to me, even there in that kind of world, which you might call much more like the spiritual world or whatever, there are certain teachers that I follow that you can tell are still very humble.
Yes.
Like they have a humbleness about them. And I was listening, who I listen to all the time now, Tara Brock, and she has one thing she was talking about. One part of it was like the nervousness of getting up and and leading, and you want to do well and whatever. And sort of to break that anxiety or that sort of anxiousness, but also to sort of keep herself almost on the same level as everybody else.
Yes.
She starts out each meditation with, "Hello, friends." And I just loved that. It was just like you're just sitting amongst friends. Like no one is better than anyone else. Like, "Hello, friends." And I
Yes.
just love that. It's like, yes, I'm sitting here, but really I'm the same as you.
Yes. We take turns leading on this earth, don't we?
Yeah. And, at points in your life, you need to be led, like you need that support or whatever. And at other times, people need for you to step up and be the leader
Yes.
or to take over. And, it was just such a beautiful, because as she said it, I was like, it was just touched my heart, because I feel like even if you say it to yourself, to kind of like put everybody on the same playing field. Like we're all
Yeah.
human beings having an experience, and we're all this basically all the same. Hello, friends.
Well, it has an awful lot to do with your paradigm. The world you think you're living in and creating, is it a teamwork world, or is it a world to say, dig me? Is it a world to hide? What world are you creating? And what I love about that is different people show up, and again, going back to the snow globe that is the Olympics, is you get to see it all. You get to see everybody be abject failures, and everybody be absolutely fantastic winners, and it's a surprise when they are either way.
Either way,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly. And I think no matter what world you live in, there's always all types.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, which do you empower?
Right. Or which do you want to be in that role, like in
Yeah.
that mixture? Um, and are you okay with making, you know, like whatever contribution you can make in your small way,
Yeah.
whatever that is?
Yeah. What if that contribution's not noticed until long after you're gone,
Yeah.
or never?
Or never, or maybe it's to fewer than you wanted, or maybe it's eventually to more than you ever thought, because we really never know.
Well, I can tell you one thing, my friend.
What can
Um, I
uh,
did
what can
not. I did not get enough Jan over the last 6 weeks. So
Okay, well, I'm glad you said that. No, I'm kidding.
you are
Uh,
one of my favorite people on the planet to converse with. And even though we have diverse experiences and ideas and maybe even views of the world, the one thing we do is we have a great listening for each other.
mhm.
And I
Yeah,
think that's an important thing that we're modeling for the rest of the world, that you don't have to agree with each other in order to be really great friends.
that's right. But I think we share some, like as you're saying that, Bill, I think we share some things that are, I think, very important to us both. And that's like, I think we're both very kind. Like there's a kindness that we
Yeah.
both have. Like I think of you and I think of myself, and not in like a bragging kind of way, but I think that that is a very integral value we hold,
Yes.
that people are special, that a kindness for the world and all its creatures kind of thing. And I
Right.
think that in that way, all of a sudden you realize that you don't have to agree. There's that element of like, I can listen to someone, still be kind, and I don't have to agree with them.
Yes.
And so, as you're talking, I'm like, that's a really strong foundation. That's a very strong value for me, is that kindness.
Yes.
And on Friday, Mary Jane and I had a conversation about like what makes a community, like what makes a community of people that really, a supportive community, a loving community. And so was that, um, kindness was one, compassionate listening was the other, was another quality, like, being able to listen to people, you know, and compassionate listening. And I think that that's the other thing that, we both share. And so,
I completely agree with you. And as I said before, if you're not sure what kind of world you're creating, at least create a world that's based on kindness.
exactly.
You can't go too far wrong with that. There's plenty of room to nuance, but if you're really starting out every day knowing that everyone you meet is going to be better at you than you at something, and that what your goal in life is to honor that and give them the respect that they deserve, not because you know who they are, but because you know who you don't know they are, and it deserves respect for everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, my dear, would you like to give our invitation to all of our lovely listeners and each other?
Yes. So be kind. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Go out and be kind, practice kindness. Practicing kindness it's an action, like to be kind. It's not something like that's passive, it's active. And so be kind enough to someone else to let them know that, they matter to you. Practice a little kindness to them, thank them for something, acknowledge them. Just let them know that you're there for them. Um, it could be someone you know, and it could be someone you don't know.
Thank you. That's absolutely marvelous. And I will also remind you that we're very interested in you going out and living your very best life and coming back and telling us all about it. Thank you, Jan. And thank you, listeners. We're lighting the candle, a world that works, and you're all part of it.
Have a great one, everybody.
Bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.